moon.
Hello there, and welcome to That's No Moon Hobby Talk, a title that has actually decided that's what we're going to call itself. I'm Cockles, your you're a bit part host. I'm the only one doing it at the moment, but maybe others will join in at some point when they have their own free time and things. Matt, not Matt. That's Matt. Matt is joining us, but I'll talk about him in a second. Andy is off planning MKGT, and Ollie is busy celebrating his other wins, and Tom is busy editing videos. So I'm joined by Matt Baker. How are you doing, Matt? Thank you for joining us.
I'm very well. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for joining us as well. Matt, we'll talk about you. Well, you're on Instagram as what's your Instagram handle should people want to find you?
Daft Fader Painting.
So have a look up that. The link will be in the video description and things for when you're going on. And the reason I put that straight off the bat is because obviously when I look at people's painting work and things like that, I always look at anyone's painting work and go, oh my God, it's brilliant. Yours like Killian's, like Justin's, like Jack's is. And I wanted people to go to it and have a look at as we were looking, but they'll see the pictures come up as we talk. But welcome to the show. We'll start as we mean to. How long you're a Star Wars Legion player? How long have you been playing for?
I have not been playing for that long, although I have dabbled in and out. So when they launched Legion back in 2018, I think, wasn't it?
At the
time I was really playing X-Wing a lot. That was kind of the game of choice, and it was the game that got me back into gaming. So we were a smallish group, but quite invested in that. And then all of a sudden, Legion came about, and a couple of friends started to get really active on it and offered a couple of trial games. So I did play a couple right back kind of when it launched, but never took the plunge and invested in it. Was really wary about suddenly acquiring armies of these new factions and going too deep into it and losing all the space to store them and just stuck with X-Wing for a while.
The X-Wing seems to be the platform for people to go in. I was the same, but Legion came out as X-Wing version 2.0 sort of that took place, and that put me off X-Wing because I was like, oh, all the stuff, and I had to rebuy all the bits, and like I was just it frustrated me. But then at the same time, this came out, and my wife made the mistake of thinking it was a board game.
And
biggest mistake she made there. So there was that. But you also play other games as well. What other games do you play? Because obviously,
I mean,
you look at your models.
Year or so, I've bought into Legion properly and Galactic. I'm a Republic player, but tried to keep just to the one faction. So just bought into that. But MCP. So I love a bit of Marvel Crisis Protocol. And then most recently, I've kind of jumped on the bandwagon with Shatterpoint, but also discovered the Middle Earth strategy battle game. Bit of a mouthful. Basically, anything that's got elves in. So there's also a bit of an Eldar collection. I'm still going to call them Eldar. I'm old enough to think of them that
fine.
way.
Yeah, people of a certain generation will definitely be calling Eldar forevermore, and it was Eldar and Dark Eldar there. What is this? Eldari and Yanari and Dar Drakari? Who knows?
Can't be doing it.
Yep.
And there's a bit of Space Marine action in there as well. So like the skirmish games suit me well, and in some ways Legion kind of is a skirmish game. Okay, you're playing with units, but in terms of the number of units you're occupying and the way you can operate them, it feels more like playing a skirmish game in that sense. Yep. So it still fits the remit quite well. And but yeah, it's from those days of no, I'm just going to stick with X-Wing, and that's the only game platform. And it's kind of expanded a little bit from there. And I have the obligatory stash of really useful storage boxes full of minis hiding in various places around the house.
Yes, mine. Yeah, I know what you mean. Mine are currently hiding under my bed or in a cupboard, and I'm due to move house at some point soon where it's all in. And so my wife has been saying, "We'll put them away." I'm like, "Hey, oh, thanks so much." But the big question is though, do you consider yourself a gamer first or a painter first or somewhere in between?
I'm probably almost definitely a painter first. Partly it's time, so I don't play nearly regularly enough. And now with so many game systems, I'm just so bad at all of them. None of them are really entrenched with a really solid knowledge of the rules. So I very much rely on the friends I play with, and I keep to casual games only. I couldn't be going to tournaments. That's just not my thing. I am quite a competitive person, probably. But I accept that if I'm not going to be competitive, I kind of want to go the other extreme. So the idea of playing in a tournament is just a no-go for me. But enjoying, games with friends is great. It just needs a little bit of sort of sympathy from those friends to have to help me through the rules a little bit and coach me along as I go. And so I stick to that side of it. But yeah, painter first and game are a bit of a second.
That's a very fair answer, and that makes sense as to look at your work. It's brilliant. Can you think back to when you were however long ago? Can you remember the first model you painted, and can you remember what it was?
I mean, it's a little bit hazy because it was a long time ago, but it was a box of metal Terminators.
Terminators. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So I originally got involved back when Rogue Trader was launched. So I pored over that hardback book so many times. I don't have it anymore. I'm gutted. It's one of those things I wish I'd kept.
Yep.
But at the time, it was the Citadel painting guides. So we used to kind of get those, and you had the creature paint set, the monster paint set, the Citadel color paint set. So we would just kind of dive in and follow the Mike B recipes and things that we'd see in White Dwarf and try and make our best of.
Can you remember the chapter?
I tried doing Space Wolves just because I'd seen them painted and they looked amazing and I loved them. Though really, I would say that of those early models, Blood Angels are the ones that are absolutely the archetype of what they represent, and that would have just been because of Space Hulk. So yeah, but I didn't choose to paint that.
I remember that. I remember actually. I think the first foray into gaming, obviously, was seeing Space Marines and things, and obviously the Blood Angels were the poster boys, and now it's the Blue Boys. It's the Ultra Boys instead. I don't know why that shift changed. I'm just interested. Maybe all of a sudden blue. Then one day it'll be the Green Marines and the Sallies and the Dark Angels. It'll spin back again. But yes, anyway. What have you done most recently then? Come back from your oldest to your recent.
Up Shatterpoint minis. So started with one of the early expansions, so Obi-Wan, 212th, and Commander Cody. So literally just finished those, and now started on one of the core set ones of doing Anakin and the 501st with Captain Rex. So literally just finished Captain Rex, and Anakin's on the bench at the moment. But it's been a bit of a. We're going through utter upheaval in the house at the minute of renovation. So my normal painting area is packed away. Paints are dotted around all over the house. It's really difficult to now find the time to actually just sit and dedicate. But Shatterpoint's quite nice. I can just pick out a couple of minis and kind of focus on them and not worry too much about the chaos around me.
You touched on family life and briefly before we were talking. Your youngsters, are they taking an interest in what Dad paints?
We've just been reading Lord of the Rings together. So everything I've been doing around that topic has been kind of sparking some interest. We've played a few games in the past with MCP, and I bought HeroQuest, and they've been enjoying. I say they, my eldest son has been enjoying playing that. Daughter's got no interest whatsoever.
That's fair.
But today they've been doing sculpt mold Pokemon figures. So yeah,
that's cool.
Happy in their own little worlds, doing their own little thing. But yeah.
I saw something, and I can't remember where I saw it. Well, internet, that everyone sees on the internet. I saw someone do this, and they were like, "What I'm going to do?" And I'm going to obviously everyone reads bedtime stories, and so what I said, "Well, I'm going to do a bedtime story, but I'm going to take a model. I'm going to get I think it was their daughter. They let their daughter choose their character as a D&D figure, and they chose whatever the hell it was." And then they painted it up and they said, "This is you. This is your adventure." And then basically the model was there. And it was sat on the side when it was story time. And the couple to make decisions. And don't know if I might be showing my age on this. Do you remember the books that you'd have that had like a book? They were really thick, and you'd roll a die, and you'd go to a page, and you go like, "This happens." Roll a die, and it would make decisions for you. They did something similar to that. So for anyone who has a young family, you can try that out. It'd be good for it. It's good.
I used to like the Steve Jackson and Livingstone books.
That's cool. Yeah, so something like that. My one thing you were saying about for the old Lord of the Rings thing, maybe your daughter might like she might like to look, here's Arwen, that sort of thing, because there's obviously the Arwen model for the Lord of the Rings and things, which is really cool. But anyway, digress. That's a family chat stuff. It's pretty cool. So you've done some Lord of the Rings stuff most recently and all this, which is always fun because they're just fun models to print. But what would be your what would be your favorite? One model or one unit, maybe or even a collection. I suppose it's up what that sticks in your mind and goes, I love doing that. And it can be anything, it doesn't have to be Star Wars, it can be anything really.
It's it's a really hard question to answer. And I've painted so many different things, and I like so many of them for different reasons. Out of my own collection, actually, it's terrain that I'm probably most pleased with because I just love the look of it on a table. So when I bought into Lord of the Rings, I did it through the Osgiliath box set. And then they released the mansion and the tower, and I kind of bought two of those, plus the tower and more ruins. And it was such a modular kit, you could kind of just combine it in all sorts of different ways. And so I really got to go to town on kind of creating this monstrosity for a tabletop. And nothing like what Zorbazor's doing, but that's another story. But for what I can
Well,
afford to keep at home,
here's the next. Well, he's
yeah,
like there's
the
next
next level,
level, and then there's next,
and
next,
then there's Zorbazor.
next. Oh, then there's
Yeah,
him. He's
so
crazy
yeah,
guy
so
in
that's
a good way.
crazy, but also great inspiration, great to watch. But they're back in the realms of what I could feasibly do. That's something I'm really pleased with, just because I love how it looks when it's all together, and it's such a simple thing to actually paint. It's on a larger scale, but it's all just washes and dry brushing. There's nothing particularly technically difficult about it. But yeah, but it has a great effect on the table, and probably for the same reason, there's some MCP stuff I've painted in the past, like the New York City apartment block, and again, no particular difficult techniques, but the effect of it on a table when it's all finished, and it just sort of sets off the minis that you've spent time working on. But there are minis I love as well. I've done a Tau Ghost Kill, which I was quite proud of, and a Cabando, which is like a great big evil chaos demon thing, which I got to try really different things on, so different techniques and different finishing things that just sort of stretched me as a painter a bit, which was great fun to
Touching
do.
on the terrain thing.
Mm.
Having the reason I ask is having just made something, so this is informative for myself. So a bit selfish. There we go. Someone made 3D printed me and sent me some stuff, and it's amazing, and the quality, by the way, is brilliant. So tell me, this is what I did, and you can tell me some things maybe that someone else might be doing this as well, so it might be helpful for them. I've sprayed it black first to give it the dark underneath, then grey to pick up highlights, but not like a quite deep spray, if you will. Because it's a deserty, rocky kind of planety type thing, I went with a dark brown to go over, but to remove the grey, but to still have sort of highlight, all this sorts of stuff. And the last thing I did, get a lighter brown and just go and give it dusting. And I mean a proper, I mean dusting to pick up light, tiny bit of texture. Has worked well. But the problem it's got is that there's no huge amounts of recesses in this because it's a brown smooth, like that clay, deserty, mud hutty type thing on. What would you do? Because there's not a lot you can wash. If you wash it, it's going to like a smear. It's going to smear on it. What could you do to improve things like that? What little bit? I've obviously painted bits of details. There's a cable on it. I've done that, and I've done little other bits. But what could you do to make an otherwise plain building pop a bit more?
I mean, the classics are turning to things like scale modeling techniques. So much, like if you look at armor weathering tutorials, you get loads of inspiration. But things like enamel and oil products are great for adding streaking effects and grime. But if you've got recesses and you want to get a darker tone into the recesses, then you could do worse than putting a layer of something like a gloss varnish over it and then applying an oil wash over the whole lot. There's a couple of ways of doing it. You can do what I call a gunk wash, which is pretty much putting on neat oil paint and then just wiping it off afterwards.
Okay,
Wipes off the top bits and leaves it in the recess. Or you can thin it and apply it more like a traditional acrylic wash that we use from sort of the classic painting systems from Games Workshop. But then you're going to tint all the top surfaces a bit more. But no, things like oils and enamels are great because they wipe off and you've got loads of time to work with them. So you're not risking damaging the top surfaces as much and you can kind of just control what they do. But then if you've got lots of flat panels and you're trying to put interest into them, then get some decals and put designs and graffiti or things like that on.
yeah,
Or get oil paints and just put little splodges and then drag a damp brush downwards through them and it will just create streaking effects. Or you can
that's
apply
cool.
rust around fittings and features. But there's always ways of putting color. If it's got any signage, then go and check out El Miniaturista's videos and put some neon effects on it, or all sorts of things you can do depending on what you've got and the setting it's in. Obviously, don't put neon on your Middle Earth stuff, but if it's sci-fi based and
That would
fitting a
be really
Star
cool.
Wars universe, then yeah.
And that's cool. So, well, watch this space. I'm going to see if we can find some cool little
Mhm.
posters to stick up, like wanted posters. So the idea is it's meant to be from Kobo from Fallen Order, the Star Wars game. The
Yeah.
idea is maybe that, so I could find a wanted poster of Cal Kestis and go and put it on there and see what happens. That would be quite cool. That's awesome. Um, so you said about your favorites, but do you have any? To, to quote Robbie Williams, no regrets. But do you have any regrets?
It'd be very easy to say no, no regrets at all. I've got hobbying regrets, like selling things in the past and or letting my collection go, and then years later, go, oh, I wish I like Metal Terminators I mentioned earlier. Wish I still had them. And books from growing up with the hobby as a teenager, but it's gone. It's gone. More recently, in terms of painting, I guess in some ways, if you make a mistake, it's just something to learn from. So there's no real thing to regret in that. There are times where results haven't been what I hoped they'd be. I did a saber tank for someone and put it was actually a clay-based wash product on that, which was supposed to just settle in the recesses and then wipe off, again, from sort of scale modeling technique, and something I'd done on other models and it's been fine. And for whatever reason, the gloss coat didn't work, and this
Mm.
wash just stuck, and it just stained everything really darkly and badly. And then I was kind of, oh, this is a throwaway start again job. But I actually managed to resurrect it through some dry brushing, and the end result was perhaps a little bit more backer worn and grimy than I was aiming at, but it still kind of looked pretty cool at the end of it all. So if you think something's beyond saving, at the end of the day, it's only paint. You can always paint over it. There's always ways to recover it. And yeah, it might not be exactly what you had in mind, but it doesn't mean it's not salvageable or great. And you just got to change your framing as to what you thought that outcome was.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah, you can always paint over and also spray over in some cases as well. So that's cool. Um, if you were say if you were looking to give advice to someone who's not just starting out or looking to, and I've said it a couple of times now, to level up where they're at, what would be some bits of advice that you can, little tidbits you could drop for people, that sort of thing?
I'd say do as I say, not as I do. So in this sense, go to a class, get one-on-one tuition or even one-to-many tuition, but go to someone that can actually show you in person, because they can tailor that content to exactly what your needs are and sort of refine that, because everyone paints in a different way and will respond to different techniques or have different things they want from their painting. What for someone might love working with really thin glazes for everything, other people might prefer wet blending or other techniques. And if you go and get that tuition, you can actually work that out with that teacher and then refine that technique once you work out what's right for you. It's not
Yeah,
something I ever did. I'd probably, if I want to level up what I'm doing right now, it's what I would want to do next. But it doesn't mean you have to be at an incredibly high level to go and do it. You could be first time you've ever picked up a brush, go and get someone to show you the basics. I wish I'd had that when I was painting as a kid, before
yeah,
the age of YouTube and being able to watch, loads and loads of videos. When I started back with the hobby in sort of earnest, I literally just absorbed content on YouTube, joined a few Patreons, learned as much as I could, and then just practiced for hours, trying, finding out what worked for me. But I could have shortcut that had I got an actual physical lesson and had someone show me what
yeah.
it
That
means.
makes
And it's simple things like, how people say thin down paint. One of the questions you see beginners asking is, well, how much do I thin it by? And it's almost an impossible thing to answer because it's different every time. It's different according to what you're trying to paint, the color you're using, the paint range, the humidity on that day. As soon as you put it on the palette, it's constantly changing anyway. So you've basically got to adapt on the fly as you do it. And it's only really through practice and doing it for hours and hours that you really get appreciation of what thinness does what. But having someone show you will just shortcut a lot of that trial and error that helps you get there yourself. So
yeah.
that would be my number one thing.
On that note, is there anyone you can the obvious names that come to head, like obviously Zorpa and Zerastro, Duncan Rose as well, that come to mind? Is there anyone you can sit there and say you might not have heard of and just say have a look at their work and sort of have a look at their
Um,
work, sort of thing?
I mean, all those channels you just mentioned, absolutely great. I'm a massive fan of Ben Comets. I watched loads of his
Who's that? Sorry.
Ben Comets,
Okay. Yep.
so German painter. Multiple Slayer Sword Golden Demon winner, very, very talented. Did a channel called Painting Buddha for quite some time. So I think that was one of the first channels I discovered and kind of started to learn who he was. And but he's since, I mean, he's got his own Patreon and does the odd release on YouTube for general consumption as well. But his techniques I found really resonated, and he does something called loaded brush. I'm sure he's not exclusive in that, but he's sort of seen as the main person that kind of credits with giving it a name, at least as a particular technique. But principle is you have a color on the brush, and then you dip the tip into a light color, usually a white, and then by dragging the brush gently across the model, the white self blends into the color that's on the rest of the brush. It doesn't have to be a color; it could just be water on the rest of the brush, and it allows you to feather it as you move. So it's a sort of speed technique for getting what would otherwise take loads and loads of layers of glazing to achieve. And Ben's an absolute master at it. It makes it look easy, but it's a great way of kind of stretching yourself to try and emulate how easy he makes it look yourself. I'm not saying I can actually do it at all, but every now and again I do go back and try it and practice it. But it's lovely to watch what he does and how he does it and learn.
I feel I feel I wouldn't do it justice at the moment. Wouldn't be too brave. I'd just be like, oh, it's gone. That'd be what I'd have for myself.
It's just paint, and it doesn't matter. You can't really make a mistake. You just have another layer to paint over afterwards,
Yeah, and like anything, it's the old learn by doing old trick as well, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
So what is your next project?
So I'm still working through a bit of Shatterpoint.
Cool.
When that's done, I've got some Legion stuff to go back to. So I recently did some Wookiees. So the next sort of natural and obvious thing is to get Yoda painted up. And then that's the sort of playable list I'm aiming at actually getting on the table at some point fairly soon without a horde of grey plastic clones accompanying them. So that's probably next, or it's back to Rivendell, or it's the Leviathan box that I've got sitting, waiting.
Oh, is that a pile of shame? Is that
pile of shame? Yeah.
Yeah, pile of shame.
Pile of opportunity.
A pile of opportunity. There's a hot take for people. If you've got piles of shame, call them piles of opportunity or piles of fun, because
every now and again they get cleared out on eBay. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just piles of investment. If you could paint any one thing or collection of things really from the Star Wars universe, seeing it's this a Legion thing going on, who might it be?
It would not be any more stormtroopers or clones.
Yeah, sod that.
I'd love to paint a Republic gunship.
Which one? The
it doesn't exist as a model unless you 3D print it. But like the dropship.
I know what you mean. The dropship with the beam cannon,
with sort of open doors and
yeah.
I've seen a few 3D print kits and I'm tempted, but I'm ever holding out and hoping that AMG might actually release an official one. I guess it's unlikely.
Is there no convert? Well, I say conversion. Do you know if anyone done any 3D conversion kits for a lat at all?
There are. There's a I can't remember the name of who produced it, but I got very close to pulling the trigger on ordering it. But they do both variants, so you can get the kind of dropship or the gunship.
That's cool.
Variant.
They are, yeah, they're really, that would be quite fun.
I love it. I mean, I guess because pre-minis, it was very much more about scale modeling and that side of it. I still love vehicles, whether they're playable or whether they just end up being scenery and terrain. Yeah.
I think for vehicles wise, if I were painting one, I think I might choose the Naboo N1 N whatever it is fighter, the one that now flies, but the yellow. But it's yellow, and yellow is a horrible color to paint if you're not confident on painting yellows, that sort of thing. But it's just, I think that's just, again, that's practice, isn't it? Really.
Exactly.
On that note, just as a thing, have you dabbled in contrast paints, and do you find them to be helpful for those who are, well, helpful full stop, or do they have their place, that sort of thing?
They're another tool in the toolbox. So I tend not to like paint whole models just in contrast. The way I paint, it just doesn't really work the way I would want them to. And actually, I find myself taking longer because I've got to then go back and use Wraithbone or Grey or White or something to touch up all the mistakes and for it to go back to using contrast again. But I do use them a lot as things like for glazing, putting color in. Blacks are really good for things like the infill of armor joints on clone troopers.
Oh, yes, they are.
Quick wins on weapons, that sort of thing. So they definitely have their use. And I do have quite a sizable collection of them and use them on pretty much every job, but I don't tend to paint with them as an exclusive coverage medium. Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. My 3D printed Rancor has been experiencing contrast paints. It's just like, oh, skeleton horde, more of that. Thank you very much. Oh, look, you look like a B1 that's just a big Rancor.
There are some things made for them, so I haven't had to paint them. But if I was doing a load of battle droids,
Perfect.
Skeleton Horde all day. Yeah.
There's a little bit of me that's just like, I wish I'd just gone. I wish I'd just
love
taken it. I wish I'd just taken it. Just gone. Dip done. Thank you. Dip done. Thank you very much. But no, there we go. Last but not least, your local area. Who is there that you would like to say, a legend, I like you, shop, whatever, is there a gaming group or an area that you'd like to plug and say, you're my heroes?
He's going to cringe at this, but I'm actually going to call out Tom.
Oh, what are you doing?
I know. Sorry
Because
about
he's going to edit this, and he's going to be like, he'll pause and be like, yeah. Go on, Tom.
I fully expect his mugshot to be on the edit. But
Yeah,
no, he had done probably more than anyone else in our local area to get Legion on the table, quite literally. Number of intro games he's run, the time he's invested in teaching new players. He's built the community at our local store, which is my second call out, Tabletop Republic. There's now a really regular group that play all the time, that have collections that far exceed whatever I own. But, you know, and most of that's probably down to Tom beating the drum and really selling the
can't give him that much credit,
ultimately.
We can't be giving him that much credit. I mean, we can, but we can't at the same time.
In all honesty, he really does.
No, that's cool. So that's Tom Smith who makes the videos. He'll put in some sort of funny message that'll plaster across going, "Way me," I imagine. And you're right. So, and Tabletop Republic is in High Wycombe. High Wycombe, thank you. I was about to say Wycombe. Wycombe Wanderers. That's the football club. So yeah,
I used to work there.
Sorry,
I used to work there.
Oh, big up back in Fenoir. The team that.
Cool, but yeah.
If you don't know your football, look up back in Fenoir. Henchest bloke you're ever going to meet or see. Anyone else or I missed out, or Tabletop Republic, Tom? Anything else, or is there anyone else that's just popped into your brain? You think actually should check out them as well before we depart?
I can't leave a video without mentioning Siege Studios.
That's fair.
I do commission painting for them, and it would be remiss of me not to give them a little bit of a plug.
Well, I was sitting there thinking, is he going to say it? Is he going to say it? If anyone,
not that they need any publicity, they are extremely well known for a reason. But they do a great job.
They do, and if you don't know who Siege Studios are, go check out their stuff on Instagram. Links below. They're painting from. It's the collection, or I would say collection, army of painters. I think is probably the politest way really to say.
There's quite a few of us now. Yeah,
it's outstanding. And if you watch other battle reports from channels and bits and pieces, they sponsor everywhere. They sponsor bits and other videos as well. So they do their thing in the community as well, which is good. Actually, I say it's good. It's pretty bloody good, to be honest. So big up them as well. And links and descriptions and whatnot should be on there, won't they, Tom? Matt, it's a pleasure having you on. Thank you for your time. And if anyone wants to check you out, they can find you on Instagram at
Daft Vader Painting.
Daft Vader Painting, if you're northern, but I'm not. But I am, but you know what I mean. Daft Vader. There we are. Matt, thank you very much for your time, and we will catch up another time. Take care. All the best.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
That's no moon.